Oh,
So that, anyways, that's how I got started. It was just a passion project.
that's awesome. I think we had a little trouble with the stream getting live, but I think we are fully live now. That's all recorded and very helpful. But
Okay.
uh,
Should I start over?
yeah, just reintroduce yourself
Uh,
super quick, and then you can jump into it.
okay, cool. So yeah, my name's Colin. I founded Redistricter, dropped out of college a year ago to work on it full time, and moved to New York, and it's been going great since. Um, Originally started as a passion project. Yeah,
And you were
that's
telling
a
us
brief introduction.
before the stream had an issue that you sort of started it as a high school project, which is interesting to me because that's not how most high schoolers spend their time.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how I got started with web development. The project in high school that I made was called Redistricter, but it was a totally different website than the current Redistricter. Um, they just share a name.
So how did you get interested in
Uh,
politics, I guess, or how did you get interested in mapping initially?
well, I mean, I have always been really into politics. I've also been really into the political map specifically. I Back when I was little, like how old was I? I must have been 5 years old during the 2008 election, and I remember like coloring in with crayons the different states in the electoral college as the results came out, and thinking it was super fun. I did that in 2012 and 2016 too. So I guess I've always been into political maps, and I've always been interested in politics too. I used to volunteer campaigns earlier in high school,
That's cool.
so this just felt like a natural progression of that.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. All right, so I mean, just give us your normal pitch. Like, walk us through Redistricter, sort of what it does, what you're proud
Yeah,
of.
sure. So it was originally meant for redistricting, right? Here, I'll just pick a state, Texas. And so it's still, can do that. You can make, new congressional or state legislative districts, whatever, that kind of thing. But these days, it's mostly just used for general data visualization. So let's say you wanted to view the demographics of a certain neighborhood. Like, what are the demographics of, this one county east of Austin, Bastrop County? So I can go, I'll just kind of walk through how I'm doing everything. So um, I've turned on this mode called draw mode, and I can just hover over a county. Oh, and I select the county here. So when I hover over this county in the right sidebar over here where my cursor is, if you can see that, it'll display all of the statistics for that county. So all of the election data dating back to like 1996, all this demographic data, and I can, I can also change the map. So right now it's displaying the 2020 presidential election results by block group. And so if I switch that to 2016, it'll do the same for 2016, 2008, 1996, etc.
Where are you sourcing that? Is
This.
that the MIT data, or how are you getting the historical elections?
So it really varies state by state. Unfortunately, there's not really one good source. Sometimes I just have to you know source it myself, which is like going to all of the different counties and finding precinct rate files, Freedom of Information Act requests, that kind of thing.
Got it. So a lot of
But
like legwork, like personal
right,
hand human work.
right, yeah. The demographic data, luckily, is really easy because it just comes from the census. The the problem though is that the demographic data and the political data, they come in two different geographies. The demographic data comes in tracks, or there's a few different shapes it can come in, but usually it comes in census tracts. And then the election data usually comes in precincts, and those shapes don't match up. Um, I'm not going to go too into detail, but a big part of Redistricter is the program I made to do something called disaggregation, which is basically just matching up those two data sets together. So you can look at a single geography and say, oh, here's the demographic data and here's the election data. And you can directly compare the two.
Can you show what that looks like? Because that's the thing that kind of blows my mind about this tool. That like kind of feels impossible that you've made possible.
Oh, what do you mean what it looks like?
What like the ability, like you have the ability to sort of break apart the geographic units and recombine them, right?
Right. Yeah. So the way I do that is I do something called I disaggregate down to the census block, and the census block is the smallest possible geographic unit in the U.S. That's nationwide. So I can show you right here. So this is a block group that I just split up that I'm hovering over.
Right, with like
with my cursor,
130
and
people in it.
right, yeah. And so I split it up into each of the census blocks that make up that block group. And yeah, so all of the election data and demographic data is kind of funneled down there, and then I can re-aggregate it into whatever shapes I want. So in this case, I'm re-aggregating it into census block groups. It's a little bit complicated.
No, it's
Kind of hard
all
to
really
explain, but
well, the thing about elections is it's all so weird and like it's all about the edge cases, right? Like there's no one way to do things, and then once you do it in one place, it's not always easy to like take that to another state or county and redo that. So it's kind of like you do have the ability to draw your own custom districts and stuff, though, right? Like that's like the main point.
right. Yeah, that's a big part of it. So, for like, if you want to explore redistricting, but also if you just want to, see like what are the statistics in a specific neighborhood. So I can go and draw a new district, and I'll draw it in like downtown Austin. It's just, make it look something like this, right?
Yeah, that's
And
really cool.
so
That's
now
awesome.
yeah. And so on this sidebar over here, I've got all of the data for this one district, so I can see like how many people have a bachelor's degree, what's the average household income, whatever.
So that's a
Um,
district you just made up, though, based on census tracts.
yeah, no, I just drew that like now. Like it's based on the block groups. So all of these shapes are block groups.
Got it. That's really cool.
And what people really like about Redistricter is there's a lot of data. So this is all the election data I have for Texas. And here's all the demographic data. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of historical data too. This was
What's the
pretty
resolution
like
on it?
particular.
Is that all like as high resolution as you can get it, basically?
Yeah, pretty much. The resolution depends on the data set.
Right.
Usually their census tract, the resolution is to the census tract. And then for election data, it's by the precinct.
And then I noticed in the right when you made your new fictional district that we still got to see election results for it. So how does that work?
This new like district that I just made.
Yeah, exactly. Like we see 2008 president in the right. Is that like a re-aggregation of the election results?
Yeah, everything, all of the election data you see here has been disaggregated and re-aggregated. So it's an estimate, not an exact result, but these estimates are pretty close to the actual results, usually within just, it depends on the size of the district or geography you're looking at, but usually the difference is pretty negligible, maybe just like a couple percent at most.
Right, unless you build totally insane districts, right?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a couple percent for like each individual block group usually. That's the margin of error. But as you build larger districts, that margin of error will decrease.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. It'll just become closer to the actual results. But yeah, so I've got historical data too. So this was particularly difficult to get. So right now I'm showing what the racial demographics of Austin looked like in 1990. And there's a little map key over here denoting the color for each race.
Nice.
And you can view that, from 1990 to 2000 to 2010 to 2020. Yeah, that was that took like, I think I spent like 2 or 3 weeks trying to figure that out, how to disaggregate historical block level data. But glad I finally figured it out.
Yeah, that's wild. It's so cool though, because once you do that step, it lets you do all the interesting analysis that you're doing after that is really cool and like really unique to this tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and it's I'd like to think it's fairly easy to use, even though it's pretty complex, but I try to make it as easy to use as possible.
I'm curious, what's the math behind that? Is it like a weighted calculation of some kind?
Yeah. So it's a weighted calculation based on the way disaggregation is done is, let's say there are 100 votes for Biden in a precinct, and that precinct is made up of 10 different block groups, 10 different census blocks, right? And so I can view the population for each census block with 100% accuracy. So I can see that, let's say all of those 10 census blocks, they had 10 people in them. So they're 10% of that precinct's population. That means that there are 10 votes for Biden in each block of that precinct, if that makes any sense.
It reminds me a little bit like dot density maps. Like we kind of just randomly splay people within the geographic unit, and you're kind of just doing that with a calculation. It sounds like.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, so that's pretty much the basics of Redistricter. There are some other features that people like a lot too. There's an election simulation kind of feature, so I can take an existing election, let's just pick, 2020 president, and I can shift it based on like racial demographics. So like, what would the 2020 election in Texas would have looked like if white people voted Democrat by like 8% more? And then I can build that election, and then it'll show up in the sidebar over here as simulated election, and I can view those results on the map and by block group and district like I would be able to with any other election.
That's so cool.
What else? You can view shifts between elections. So this would show the shift between the 2016 and 2020 presidential election by block group. You change these elections. You can adjust it for like statewide election trends. You can show turnout by election, turnout shift, all sorts of stuff. There are some other interesting elections too. So I have in some states primary data, so I can see like how did this district in Austin vote in the 2016 Democratic presidential primary? Like, oh, it voted for Sanders by 3% or whatever. So sometimes that can be useful for analysis.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And like you just have it's just filled with a ton of data, right? And are you just that's how you spend a lot of your time now, like in terms of maintenance, it's just adding new data sources, or what's the most interesting thing to you?
I guess I would say that's probably the most interesting. I've been spending less time with that recently, but when 2024 wraps up, I'll be working on adding 2024 election data.
And how long do you think that will take once the election's over?
Hopefully it won't take long. I'll be collaborating with an organization called Vote Hub.
Oh, cool. Yeah, they do awesome work.
Yeah, so we'll be doing a collaboration where, for data collection that'll make things easier and faster for both of us. So
yeah, because it's a lot of legwork.
Smooth things out.
Like we talked about before, it's like human data processing and reaching out and cleaning and all that stuff.
Yeah, it can be a real pain. And they do a lot of that kind of work, so super helpful.
That's cool. And what you said, you're spending your time more now doing not data aggregating.
No. So right now, I've just been working on adding a bunch of different, like small minor features. So for example, the ability to create maps of once here. I'll show you. This was something I did a couple of days ago. So I can go create a map that, only contains specific counties. Not exactly game changing, but it's just an example of the minor stuff I've been working on. Adding new tools, like there's a map animation tool, a district analysis tool. So if I go like make some districts over here, hold on. I can view the partisanship of each district, just minor stuff like that.
Whoa, you're going through a lot of really cool stuff really quickly.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. What else? You can customize the map colors. So this is what it looks like by default. I can go over here and say like, just pick different colors and stuff. And then I'll change the way that the map looks. If you're into that kind of thing, you can do the same thing with demographic colors. And there are some other ways to view election results. So, hold on. There's one map mode I really like is called the net votes per capita map mode. So what this is going to show is the net votes per capita is the number of votes that the winning party in an election netted divided by the population. So it's a factor of both margin and election turnout.
Interesting.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Here, I can show an example of where that would be useful. So I'll just hop back into Texas for a second to show this. And so if I'm looking at the net votes per capita in Texas, I could see that I'll just use 2016 as an example, right? Like the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas, it voted deep, deep blue in 2016. But if you turn on the net votes per capita map view, you'll see that it's really not. The Democrats didn't net that many votes because the turnout in the Rio Grande Valley is so low versus somewhere like Austin, right, where the margins are high and turnout is high.
Mm.
And they're different. Like you can use like the Wikipedia map colors,
That's cool.
some other minor stuff like that, and trying to think what else.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the tech stack, sort of like how it's built, the choices you made in terms of choosing? There's a lot of choices to be made in making a product like this, of like where you store your data, how you build your APIs, like what kind of mapping tools you use. I would be curious to hear your approach.
Yeah. So originally I'll just start with the mapping tools. So originally I was using Mapbox, and Mapbox is great if you're within the free load limit. And then once you pass the free load limit, it becomes like horrendously expensive.
Yeah, that's been
I
my
think they wanted
experience
to
as
bill
well.
me like, yeah, I think I went like, because they give you like 50,000 free loads, but then the next 50,000 I think costs like hundreds and hundreds of dollars or something like that.
Yeah, I
So
got
as soon
sent a
as I was
bill
getting
for
up to
like
that
two
limit,
grand a couple, like I guess last year or something like that. They ended up, I talked to their support folks and they forgave it, but like I've heard a bunch of
yeah,
people run into that issue. It seems kind of sketchy.
yeah, it's I mean, it's pretty common with that kind of stuff. But so then I switched to Map Libre, which is a little bit better, but still really expensive. I think it cost me like $500 a month or something like that. I didn't have to worry about hitting like API limits, that kind of thing, but it was still really expensive. And then I found
Can you pull up
Proto
Map
Maps. I
Libre?
can't remember. Uh,
Just like for
Map
folks who aren't
Libre.
familiar with it.
Oh wait, no, I didn't mean Map Libre. I meant what was it called?
Map Tyler?
Map Tyler. Yes, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah,
Got it.
Map Libre is not Map Libre is a nonprofit. I think they're just an open source project that everything is built off of. But yeah,
So for
Map
folks who,
Tyler is
yeah,
what I
what's Map
used.
Tyler?
It's basically, I mean, the way I used it, I think they do a bunch of different things, but the way I used it was just as a replacement for Mapbox. It was the same thing. They just
So
charged me
they
a
like
little bit
host
less.
base maps for you, or like host vector tiles and stuff?
Yeah. So I was just using them to get the tiles. That was it.
Got
And
it.
they were charging me a lot of money. And then I found Proto Maps, which was amazing. I don't remember what I'm paying. It's like $20 a month, $10 a month, something like that. Like really cheap for what I'm getting. And so if anyone's in my position, I highly recommend Proto Maps. And so the code that I use for Proto Maps is the same I use for Mapbox because it's all built off of Map Libre. But yeah, so that's one part of the tech stack. When I started the project, I really I made some not smart decisions about my tech stack just because I just didn't know what I was doing. My only other web development project was the original Redistricter, and that was just written in pure JavaScript. So, I started the Redistricter 2.0, which is the current version, and I decided to use React, which, I love React. It's great. But at the time, I really had no idea what I was doing. So I wrote some really garbage code. And I figured it out over time. But yeah, what else?
What would you do differently? Like if you were talking to your younger self, what are a few tips you would give them?
I would have said, if I could talk to my younger self right now, I would say learn more about hooks and stuff and state management, because that was a pretty big issue, especially because there's a lot of different objects to manage with all of this precinct data and all the district data. So managing interactions between the districts and the precincts and then saving that to a server, it can be kind of messy. It still is. It's not perfect. It has a lot of issues, but it's a lot better than it was.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that, like how you store and retrieve all this data?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. So the precinct data is one object, everything, all these little features you're seeing here. And then the districts are another object, and then there's a bunch of other little stuff. And I have a method of compressing that to save on space. And then when you create districts, after a few seconds, it'll autosave and send that to a server. Or you can manually save it like this, and then it'll save that. And so I can close the map and reopen it right here. And yeah, that's it. It's nothing super complicated. There are a few issues with it, but mainly with like bigger maps because the district objects could become pretty big and hard to compress. But
Yeah, do you
anyways,
have a mode where I can see the entire U.S. with like high resolution, or is that one of the
uh,
things that's like hard to do?
people have asked for that. I don't think I'm ever going to do that just because the size of these, because it has to load this. It has to load this huge GeoJSON of all of these block groups right here.
Right.
And so for Texas here, I can pull up the file right now. For Texas, this GeoJSON file that it's loading is uncompressed 107 megabytes. And so to do that for the entire country, you'd be loading gigabytes of data. And I think that
Right, like 5 GB. Yeah, that's
really
insane.
be, yeah, like 5-6 gigabytes of maps. And that would be really unstable.
It does
There is
sound
a mode where
awesome
you can,
though. Very tempting.
yeah. I thought about doing something where it would have to be more dynamic, but like when you zoom out, it shows you county level data, and then when you zoom in, it'll separate that into precincts or block groups or whatever else, the smaller units. Something like
It would be
that.
easier if it
I
were
don't know.
server generated, right? So it doesn't have to be
Yeah,
instantaneous, but I want like a 6,000 by 6,000 PNG with everything rendered. You know what I mean? And I
right.
don't care if it takes 30 seconds or whatever.
So that is something I really want to do. The problem is, speaking of like tech stack stuff, I didn't use Next.js, and so that makes that kind of stuff a little bit harder. And so this is all based off of Firebase, and
Ooh,
Firebase handles like authentication. They handle functions. It's pretty good.
I love
The
Firebase.
pricing is pretty good too. Yeah. The only problem is that their Next.js, they have a Next.js feature, but it really sucks right now. It's in beta. It's not very good. I don't know if it'll go anywhere. It's been like that for a while. So I mean, I kind of want to switch to maybe Vercel or something like that, even if it costs a little bit more. But the big problem with that is it would, well, one, it would require me to rebuild a lot of my code base, and secondly, it would be a big issue because all of my authentication is done with Firebase. So I'd have to redo like
Yeah, you
all
have
of the username and
customers.
passwords that are stored.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're gonna have to start over, and so that's kind of a pain. I don't want to
yeah, that sounds
putting my
awful.
customers through that. Kind of sucks. Yeah. So Firebase is great, but they lock you in, and they're pretty good at that. So once you're in, you're in.
What about Supabase? That was like it felt to me like the natural evolution after using Firebase.
Yeah. I mean, I could switch to that, but it'd be the same problem.
Same
You
problem.
know, can't transfer authentication easily. Yeah, I don't know. Vercel would be cool. I've heard they're kind of pricey, but I don't know. I did a little bit of experimentation with it, and the developer experience was pretty good. I liked it a lot.
So you're saying that like there's a refactor that's both like deploying to a new host and rewriting it in Next.js.
Yeah. And that would make writing server functions a lot easier too,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to get into specifics. I have some issues with Firebase functions and Google Cloud just crashing on me all the time. So
I literally was just
yeah,
talking this morning about like I just switched our AI bot off Google Cloud because it was just like I switched to Fly.io, which is just a kind of like a Heroku VM alternative.
mm,
But it was so much
right.
easier not using a Google tool. Like I spent like literally days like making the firewall, like making all the permissions and stuff work in the crazy Google menus, and it's like I don't know. I felt the tools are our tools are getting a lot better now. You know what I mean? Like people are solving these problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Google Cloud. I mean, it's good when it's good, and it's bad when it's bad.
Yeah.
um, what
I'm
else?
curious to zoom out a little bit, and like I want to ask, for the people who are using Redistricter regularly, do you have a sense of how it fits into their workflow? Like, what are they doing? Like, what is the context of when someone would use Redistricter?
A lot of times just to retrieve election and demographic data for a specific place. So, like this district I drew in Austin, if you wanted to get the demographic data for this manually, you'd be fiddling around with like GIS, geographic information system software for like 20 minutes. And so it's just a big time saver.
Well, back up a little bit because like that person, are they like a campaign manager? Are they like are they staff on a super PAC, or like what is the type of person?
All types of people. Sometimes some people are just interested in politics because the subscription isn't that expensive. Some people are political consultants. people working on campaigns, as you said. So all sorts of people, journalists, really anyone that just needs election and demographic data for a specific area easily without having to write code or use GIS.
Have you explored any like non-geographic visualizations? Like I've seen that, like you showed a few really quickly when we talked about other stuff, but that's one of the, you have so much cool data, and like, of course we have the bar charts and stuff. But I'm curious if you like maybe how much you've thought about that or explored that, because that is the thing that Kern and I are most like interested in and good at. So I'd be
I could imagine scatter plots, line charts.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I guess I haven't really experimented with it much. I mean, I've got this district analysis tool, but that's about it. Yeah, I mean, that'll be something good to ask my customers about. But yeah, no, I'd definitely be open to experimenting with that kind of thing. I mean, you've kind of got that bar chart thing in a very simple form over
Yeah,
here
exactly.
with the election and demographic data.
I want a scatter plot, right? Like I want to take every
Right.
every unit we're looking at in Texas and put it as a dot, colored, circled, sized, and positioned by different data points, and then like transition between
Right.
them. Because your data is so good, like the data is so high resolution.
Yeah.
So
No, that would be cool.
you have commercial customers that you license your data to, or how does that work? If like I wanted to build that as a customer, I would come to you and pay for access, or do you even sell that, or how does that work?
Yeah. I've got a data license, so you can get a quote over here. And so it's just for anyone who wants the raw data for Redistricter, all of the data by block group or precinct or census block, whatever. And it's priced by the state or county you want it in based on population. So I just have a normal rate that I charge depending on the population of whatever geography you want all that data for.
Cool. And how do you deliver that data?
Just email, really.
Cool. So it's just like flat
I just send a big
GeoJSON files.
GeoJSON.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, just like a GeoJSON file.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And do a lot of people do that, or most people use it through the tool?
Most people use it through the tool, but I've got several people who are, I've gotten the data license. It's a one-time cost. So you just pay once and you have the data.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's for the super dorks like us.
Yeah, for the data license, it's a lot of academics actually. So a lot of people get grants from whatever college they're at, and then they use it for research papers.
Can we do? did I license Wisconsin from you? Is that the one I paid for?
I think so.
Can we do a little experiment on Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Like I want to make a scatter plot of the Wisconsin data, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
You're gonna make it on VizHub?
Yeah, exactly. Like, but the main thing I'm wondering is how do I get that data to VizHub, right? Because you have a big now I'm solving the problem like serving a big GeoJSON. Like maybe I just should I just upload it as a static file to my website and then reference that in VizHub?
Well, I wonder how big it is, because VizHub has a feature where you can just drop in a CSV into the platform.
Yeah, how big's
the feature where you can just drop?
How big is Wisconsin?
Oh, sorry, like the file?
Yeah.
I'd have to go check. Hold on, I've got a hard drive.
And what sort of file is it? Is that like a CSV?
It should be a GeoJSON file. I'm
looking for the email you sent.
Yeah, hold on. I've got a hard drive with all my data on it somewhere in my apartment.
That's very cyberpunk. You should just put them on all different SD cards, and then people show up to your door.
Oh god, SD cards would be such a nightmare. Trying to transfer all of that data and be waiting for
put it in SD cards, and I'll 3D print a US map that has little spots for each SD card in the state.
Ooh, yeah. Here we go. So the block groups are 42 megabytes, so not that bad.
That's not bad at all.
And then there's different files. For some reason, the one in the cities is pretty big too. It's kind of strange. Precincts is 60, and counties are 1.5 megabytes.
Sick.
If you're using blocks, like census blocks, which is the smallest unit, it's going to be way bigger. Let's see. That would be 1.5 gigabytes.
Oh, boy.
But you probably don't want to use that.
I do want to use that. I want
Well, then maybe, yeah.
I want the high resolution, insanely detailed version. I really do want to do it for the whole U.S., but you got to start with one state, and that's the one
The
we have
whole
access
U.S.
to.
versus, that would be a nightmare. I mean, I'm trying to think how big would that file be. I mean, it'd be huge.
Yeah, if it's
Like,
5 gigabytes per state. Yeah, it's
it's
like
1.5 for Wisconsin,
a
so
quarter terabyte.
like something like that. Yeah, like a quarter of a terabyte. I mean, that hard drive I have is mostly just census block data.
All right, you've dissuaded me. Perhaps not the census blocks, but one level up would be nice. So I guess it's on. It might be not good for the stream because it's on us to take that data and get it in a publicly accessible place where we can use it in BizHub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd want to get this
Wait, you
file
mean like
size
the
down.
block group data? Is that what
Anything like kind of what are we looking at right now? I guess this is block groups.
we're looking at block groups?
Yeah,
This is what I would recommend for what
I
you're
want to
trying to
see
do.
each thing we're looking at now in Wisconsin like as a circle, and maybe we size the circle by population, and we do we could just make little sliders for X and Y and kind of move it around. That's like how I start every data set project almost.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
I could, do you want to make that on BizHub or on Redistricter?
I want to both, I guess. But I'm also cognizant we have like a little more than 20 minutes left. That's probably a bigger project than 20 minutes. If I had done a little prep and gotten it up, we could have done it. But I'm trying to think of like something cool. I guess here's something like, are there any ideas that you've played around with, or that Dataviz ideas that maybe we can sketch out together, or riff on, or anything like that?
Hold on, I've got a notes file. Let me look at it.
I had also thought about
see.
sketching. Maybe we could do some sketching of like future feature ideas, because I have a lot of ideas.
I would love to hear your thoughts on this so far, currently.
Yeah. Could even do like a camera with sketching, but just to talk it out, like I have so many ideas. You can select a group of these entities, right? With like a lasso. Is that a feature that exists?
Yeah, you can. So I've got like a little draw tool over here, and I can do this.
Oh, nice.
That's like one of the sickest things, by the way. It's so cool.
Yeah. That's really nice. So I could imagine using that as like a pre-filtering step, and then having something, a totally new section of the page appear, where on one side you see the map, and on the other side you see this other thing, which could be a scatter plot, where each point represents one of those entities. What is it? Districts? I remember. But then you could have menus for X and Y, right? So X could be anything you have data for, like percent white or education level or income, and Y could be anything. So you'd have like these giant menus mirroring the structure of what you have already with the groupings. It looks like you have a 2-level taxonomy of metrics, right? Which is pretty cool.
Right.
And so that could be X and Y. And then in the scatter plot, color, I guess, would naturally be the same thing that color is on the map. But color, I mean, you could use color for all sorts of things. And even on the map, can you change what the color is on the map, or is it fixed?
What do you mean? Like what data set it's coloring by? Yeah, you can change that. Yeah,
meaning
you got all sorts of options.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, you just click on them.
Nice. So yeah, that's already set up. Maybe you could reuse a lot of those interactions too. So instead of using those interactions to select color, you could select X or Y on a scatter plot. And also, do you have data going back over time?
I do, yeah. So I've got both election data. The election data in Texas, for example, goes back to like 1996, and then the demographic data. There's a few data sets that go back to like 1990 or 2000.
I would guess that there's interest among these researchers in like trending, like what is trending up or trending down. And so if you have that data that goes over time, that opens the door for line charts.
Or a linked scatter plot, right? Where they...
Yeah, or scatter plot plus line chart.
Yeah.
You know, where
Mm.
you ever seen the Gapminder scatter plot, which is one of those classic scatter plots with this guy Hans Rosling
That is a
narrating the scatter
classic.
plot. That and the thing is, the scatter plot changes over time. Like literally, the points are animating and moving. And so I could
Mm.
imagine doing something like that, where you switch between like what was it in 2000, what was it in 2010, and then the scatter plot points could animate and move.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
also,
that could be
you
pretty
know,
cool.
you, what happens if you select one of these regions? Is that a is that an option right now?
What kind of regions?
Like
Like
selecting a
counties,
single. I keep forgetting what the level of detail
districts?
is.
I know there's
The,
a lot of
the
terminology.
deepest level of detail is what a census block or block group.
Yeah. So over here, they're not showing by default. I have to split a precinct to show them. But yeah.
Yeah, we need some
Um,
breadcrumbs or something of like what level of breakdown
oh,
we're
okay.
in.
That's actually a great idea. Hold on. I'm gonna write that down because that's
Or
really
even with
good.
the brushing, because what I wanted to communicate is
That's actually
for any
really smart.
selection of these regions where you have time series data, you could aggregate them and then create a scatter plot. Create a little line chart
Yeah, of the trend.
of the trend of any of the metrics that you have data for going back in time.
Yeah, and you could just
Almost
like
like
what,
a
like put it in this toolbar, open it as a window like this.
yeah, or you could even be a little tooltip. Like once you do a lasso selection, there could be an option to like show the trend for
Mm.
that group.
I would take a step further. We haven't talked about this at all, but I'm really excited about like feeding all this data to LLMs, right? So imagine you select
Right.
some units, feed all of the demographics
Oh
for it,
yeah.
and then be like, what's interesting here? What's an outlier here, right? Like what you'd probably send some additional, median max metadata along with it, but I think that you could have the robot kind of direct your user to what's the most interesting thing in, the place they're interested in, right?
Right. I'm just trying to think like what the desired like output from like an AI would be like.
I would suggest three
Um,
or four trends, right?
mm,
Do you want a line chart of it looks like demographics on race are changing a lot, or it looks like this place has voted consistently for the past 70 years, and in the last 2 years
right.
it's swung more than it ever had. Like if we can get analysis, like kind of localized analysis of what's different, because you have so much data that'll come from all sorts of different places, right?
Right.
It's kind of like a
I
story,
bet.
an automated like story extractor, right? I come from journalism, or like
Mm,
when I was working in the news, right? This is what the producers are thinking about all day, every day. Is like in the place that is really important in the election. What are the trends there? What's different? What's changing? What are other places that are like that in the U.S. that we can compare to?
yeah, that's a pretty good idea. I mean, as for, I wonder if you could just automatically generate a summary of just. I mean, you could simplify the data a lot too because the actual files are massive. But
We used to do that
there's so many.
before AI, right? Like we called them data-driven sentences, where it was just like the
Right.
race is 75% complete. This candidate is this
Mm,
much ahead, and you don't need an AI for that. But like just having sentences that reiterate what you're seeing is really useful as well.
right. Yeah, I'm just trying to think like what an AI could bring to something that like the user looking at the data wouldn't see. Maybe I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of data. Maybe it could, the user's not looking at everything. If you sent the AI all the data, maybe it could find like oddities. I don't know. Just trying to think like no user is going to look at all
I'll give you a better
the
use
ancestry data
case.
sets.
Is I would love to send it all of the data you have and ask it to write a one paragraph summary of it, right? And I've
Right.
experimented with this on my own, like with my own election data, and it does a pretty good and
Mm,
interesting job, especially if you give it historical. Like it will tell the story. This place has voted the same, or this place in the last 4 years the demographics have shifted and they're voting a lot more Democratic, right? Like that is
right.
the story in a lot of places, and it's not hard to see it if you just give it all of that info. So for me, it comes down to like if I can get really and this is a different user than the user who uses Redistricter. It's like a general. I'm trying to convey this data as through journalism to a general audience, right? So they need like a one step further of simplification of like not just the map, but like what is that map showing me? and they're also not going to look through a bunch of different things. And I don't want to have to, in a breaking news situation, have to look through every data point either to figure out like what's different or what's changing the most or where the outliers are or what makes it more different from other counties in this area or this state.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I do have county level data too, so you could feed it that as well. Um, I'm wondering if it would make more sense to use like a multimodal model and then send screenshots of the maps.
You should totally do that. That sounds awesome. I want to do that so bad. Because we talked a little bit about this. We were working with Earthrise, who do satellite analysis through machine learning, and they apply it to, they teach it what a gold mine looks like in a satellite image, and then it found, hundreds of unknown gold mines. So I was really interested in, of course, their model looks at satellite images. I wanted to try to give it satellite images with data overlaid and see if the image model would incorporate that into its like embeddings and analysis. I never got a chance to try that, but you just brought it up again.
So I guess the end goal here would be to find like the socioeconomic or political equivalent of like an undiscovered gold mine,
Yes.
Like some analysis that no one else has made.
Correct.
Okay.
Or another way, painting a picture of like, this is a place in America, and we pull up, unemployment over the last 8 years and their political history. This is the Rust Belt America, and they are one of the parts of America that flipped from Obama to Trump in 2016. They're a big part of Trump's comeback. And this is how the demographics have changed in the past 4 years, right? Since Biden took office. Did things get better in the Rust Belt, or did they get worse? And I know plenty of people could spend days telling that specific story, but maybe you teach it, what a Rust Belt looks like, and then you can pull up all sorts of places in America that have that same pattern that you wouldn't necessarily be able to see before, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Or I could imagine, once 2024 is over, if we look at places that were really surprising, you know what I mean? Like, imagine there's a county in Florida that swings wildly in one direction or another. After that happens, it would be great to send it all this data and say, what makes this county different from other surrounding counties? And what other counties in the U.S. look like this county in terms of demographic shift? Like, what other places might do this kind of thing in the future?
Yeah, that makes sense. Something else, actually, I was working on yesterday was automatically generating, in redistricting, there's something called communities of interest. These are just different neighborhoods or cities or whatever that share some unique quality among them. So, for example, here, I'll pull up some data that might be like a good example of this. I'll pull up the language data set. So, for example, a community of interest right here might be like, this is coloring each block group by like the show that speak like an Indo-European language. This is like an Amish community out here that could be considered a community of interest, that kind of thing. And it would just generate like hundreds of those throughout the entire state, and then maybe it could do an analysis on each of them.
That's a really cool. I want to do that really bad. I want to make that happen. The image analysis part of it, like, that's fascinating.
Yeah. What else? Yeah, I mean there's a lot of data. So, yeah.
Is there anything that like you've been asked for a lot that you've chosen not to do because it's not sort of within your vision, or it's too difficult, or anything like that?
I mean, the whole like nationwide visualization thing, that's something I really want to do at some point, but until I like refactor Redistricter's code, move it to something where like Next.js or something like that, that's not really feasible. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I can't really think of all of them off the top of my head. Probably like half of the things that people come to me for. And I love when people come to me with feature requests, but like half the time I can't do it, or I just don't think it's worth it because it just takes a really long time to add.
Well, because it's compounding, right? Because if you add a feature to this, you have to echo it out across the smallest geographic unit in every state in America, which is a lot of places and a lot of data, right?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it happens all the time. I guess I can't think of many examples off the top of my head. I mean, I write down the features I want to add. I don't write down the features that I can't add,
Yeah, I guess
I don't have a list of that.
Is there anything that like you're really excited about, or I don't know, something that we can...
Right now, not really. Just making everything more stable, making it more usable, adding more little features. But right now, a big, breakthrough idea would be something that would I'm like really bad, but I just don't have anything like that.
Do you collect analytics
Maybe,
on how your users use the app?
yeah, I mean, base level stuff, nothing too intense. I used the service Sentry for a little bit, but I stopped paying for it because it was kind of
Yeah, it's
expensive.
pretty intense.
Yeah, and it like affected performance in really weird ways and caused all these bugs. But anyways, no, not anymore. I just collect, you know, just normal like how many times have people made a map of this state, or how often does this user log on, that kind of
That's
thing.
cool.
Nothing
I wanna
crazy.
visualize. You should clean up and anonymize some of that, and we should visualize some of that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you engage
I
with
mean,
your how do you engage with your users? Do you have like a mailing list or like events where you talk to them?
I mean, a lot of it is through Twitter. I have a Discord channel as well.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, and people email me with bug requests. I find that my interactions with my users are usually about. I mean, it's pretty basic. It's usually just like they're either reporting a bug or they're saying, "Can you add this feature?" And I'll respond with, "Yes, I can add it," or "No, I can't." Um,
Can you talk a little bit about the growth of it? Like from when you launched it,
mhm.
what was the growth like? Was it sort of like an avalanche or was it a slow growth of
It was pretty
customers?
linear, really. It was pretty linear.
Yeah. Hmm.
So it just grew at a pretty steady rate for a while. Um, yeah, nothing crazy. I had some big bumps after some people, a couple of tweets would get a lot of interactions, or someone would post about it in a blog, that kind of thing. But for the most part, it was pretty linear.
Nice.
Um, but yeah,
That was really
I don't
cool.
know.
It's there's so
Yeah.
many things we could dive more deeply into. I guess one of the things that I wish is that there was like an API I could pay for. You know what I mean? There's like a bunch of things
Mm.
like I don't want to get all the
I can
data
make that
at
if you want.
once.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I want
Yeah. Yeah.
to make a, especially to like link into VizHub or my own, like I wouldn't build it in React, right? I'd probably build it in Vue or Nuxt, or somebody else might want to build it in Svelte or, Vercel or whatever it is. Um, yeah, having the ability to just like say I want the 1990 election results in this county in Texas and get that back, that would be worth a lot to me, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that would take a little bit of time. It's kind of weird.
It's a
Actually,
whole
all the
other
data I have.
product. Like it's like, you know what I mean? To
Yeah.
manage an API and sell it, you have to like, and then you have to version it. It's a lot
Right.
of, it's not, definitely not a small work to expose that, but
But I mean, if you want to pay for that, that's something I can totally figure out. The thing is, right now I've got it. I can't remember how is it data.redistricter.com, but the actual data it's sending over is obfuscated. Is that how you pronounce it?
yeah.
Um, so it's. I guess you couldn't use this for an API, but yeah. So if I go ahead and like just save this and then pop that in VS Code, you just see like it's like
It's like
actually I'm not
encrypted
showing my screen.
JSON.
Yeah, I don't have to show it. It's just obfuscated. But yeah, no, I mean, I would have to make a separate data repository for that, but that's definitely something I could do. Or it might just be easier for me to send you the data. I mean, unless you're using the census blocks, which those are huge, those files, then you could just download all of the block groups for every state, and it'd be like 7 GB.
That's not bad. And then I've done before, like I would probably put it in SQLite and build a dataset instance on top of it to get the REST API.
Right. Yeah, something like that. So I guess I could make something like that.
Or
The
even like
blocks
I
would be
could
more
migrate it into
difficult.
Supabase. That's what I was doing for electology, right? Is just keeping all my election data in
Mm,
Supabase, which I don't know. It made it easy to query small bits as I needed them, and I can also do
right.
Postgres like geographical queries and things like that, which is fun and interesting. I didn't get into that a ton, but I think my main thing is like how do I get the smallest unit of data for visualization at the right time, because that helps you
Right.
be performant, and also like for me I want to also take in live election data, so you're kind of enhancing live election data with you're not you don't know in advance what the most important data point is going to be on election night, or like what place
Hmm.
exactly, or you know what I mean, so you kind of have to handle every possible story and then you use one of the 100 things you prepared for on election night.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Cool. Well, that was a
I don't
really
know.
excellent demo. Do you have any other questions, Curran, or anything that you want to go over, Colin, before we kind of wrap up?
No, I think that's about it. I don't know how many people are watching if they have anything to say.
I've been watching the chat. I haven't seen anybody yet. It's been pretty quiet.
Okay, cool. All right. No, I don't have anything more to say.
Sweet. It's a really cool tool. Like it's
Thank you.
I feel like looking at it, you kind of feel like you're sitting in the cockpit of a fighter jet a little bit. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot
Yeah.
of things that I just my temptation is to go around and like flick knobs and see what happens. You know what I mean? So I want to.
I mean, that's a good way to experiment. Yeah. There's a lot of. It's hard to make a clean UI for this. I really try, but it's like, I don't know. I mean,
Well, you
you've
couldn't
got to
fly a fighter
balance.
jet, yeah, if it didn't have
Right.
all the thing. Like you couldn't do the advanced things that you need to do, right? So your users, I think, want that.
Yeah, they do. I get complaints from new users though about, like this is like really complicated. I don't know how to use this, which is fair. But at the same time, it's like my more experienced users, they want everything. So if I had every little tool behind like a drop down or whatever, then it would make things harder for them.
Well, the alternative, right, is
Even
just
if
to
it would make
make good
things
content, right? Is you just start putting out videos of like, here's how you do this. You know what I mean? Then
right.
when
No, I do need to do more video tutorials. I just started documentation for it's at docs.redistricter.com. But I think a video tutorial would be good.
yeah, just little, because this is what everybody is hiring now for. It's like dev relations. You need every day to put on Twitter a video of you doing something with the tool to make people be like, oh, I want to do
Right.
that, or you know what I mean, to understand what's possible.
And shout out
Right,
to the
yeah.
homepage too. Like you
Yeah,
did
the
a really
homepage
great
is
job.
sick.
Thank you. Yeah, I spent way too long on that. This, I think I posted about it in the studio chat, but this SVG lining it up, because this is an SVG map, and then the animations of the lines are done with CSS, and that's overlaid on top of like a PNG image of New York. That took forever to get right, and to get it working with like every dimension.
I'm impressed by the messaging too. Like, how did you choose what words to put on here? Like, what points to emphasize?
I don't know.
Because
Just
it's really spot on.
gut
Unparalleled
decision.
data access.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's just something I thought about a lot. Yeah. I guess this component was pretty hard too. This is like make it like, because I just reused these where is it? These
you're right. It
components
looks
over here from the
straight out of the
sidebars.
product.
Yeah. And then I changed some things, but it's got to resize with the window.
Are you using Tailwind, or like what kind of component library are you using?
Well, actually, for most of the stuff on the landing page, I'm using Tailwind, but I'm not really using the component library. I just made the components myself.
Nice.
But yeah, Tailwind's great. Makes my old landing page right before this was not using Tailwind, and it was a mess. Yeah, switching to Tailwind was one of the best decisions I ever made. It makes making a UI so much easier.
I agree. I came from Tachyons, and Tailwind's like a lot more opinionated, or like has a lot more, I guess, patterns that you need to fall into. But I'm actually becoming to like really like and respect the patterns. So like it doesn't, for the most part, it won't let you mess things up in the grid or in your spacing and vertical rhythm, as long as you like follow the general principles, right?
Right. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out and sort of walk through the tool with us. It's super. I'm excited to see how it evolves and changes, and I'm like, this will be a cool little artifact of like the first version in a few years. So, yeah, thank you for hanging out and going through this.
Anytime. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the stream.
Of course.
Awesome.
Curran, thanks for hanging out. All right, I'm gonna click the button. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks you for everybody in present and in future for hanging out.